Okay, good evening, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started with tonight's meeting. We have a pretty robust agenda to get through, and so I'd like to make sure that we have enough time for both presentations. Welcome to the San Diego Citizens Forum public meeting, being held here in person at the Coronado Library in Coronado, California, and via Teams webinar and conference call as well. My name is Leslie Grijalva. I'm a public affairs specialist with the U.S. section of the International Boundary and Water Commission. Just some housekeeping items. There is a sign-in sheet at the front of the room over here by the main door. If you could please sign in for us, that is a way for us to make sure that you get on our mailing list for future upcoming meetings and any other news releases that we might put out for the area. There's also copies of an agenda and a fact sheet that we have out there as well. There's water there as well, and restrooms are located straight out this door to the right and to the left there. Okay. If you have joined via Teams, you should be able to see the PowerPoint presentation that I have up on the screen right now. If you've called in via telephone or if you cannot see them on Teams for a reason, you can view the presentations on our webpage. They are there for people to download. You can grab a pen and I will give a link to that call-in number in a minute. All meeting participants will be muted except for the Citizens Forum board members, presenters, and IBWC staff. If you signed up to speak during the public comment period with me prior to the meeting, I have noted your name and I will call on you when we get to that portion of the agenda. If you've connected via Teams, you can see a little icon of a little circle with a chat or comment symbol. You can use that chat feature to ask any questions during the presentations. There will be someone monitoring the chat and we will get to your question when the time is appropriate. If Teams just isn't working for you, you always have the option of calling in by phone. And let me give that number now. The number is 872-240-1286. It's going to prompt you for a meeting ID. The number is 230947729 and the pound sign. And the phone conference ID is 230947729 and the pound sign. As I mentioned before, the presentations are loaded on our webpage. You can go to the link that's on this screen here. Link is not there. I can provide that. Sorry. The links will be posted under the meeting for today under today's date. So I will get started now with the formal part of the presentation by introducing our next speaker. Soderman's biography. So Dr. David Soderman is the manager of the Monitoring and Technical Services Division at the San Diego County Air Pollution Control District. David has a PhD in atmospheric chemistry and has 25 years of experience collecting, analyzing, and presenting air quality data. We'll be here today presenting on air monitoring of the Tijuana River odors.
Listening. We can go on to the first slide. So my name is David Soderman. I'm the monitoring manager at the San Diego County Air Pollution Control District. The Air Pollution Control District, as we call itself, is either agency or just the district. Our mission is to provide clean air for all. And we do this by working with state agencies and the federal government, Environmental Protection Agency, to regulate sources that emit pollution. Our local authority is on stationary sources. We work with the state agency to enforce area-wide and local emissions, and with the federal government to regulate plane emissions. So if we go on to the next slide, talk a little bit about this program that ultimately led to us deploying sensors to monitor for hydrogen sulfide, which is the main odor or the main compound that causes the odor from untreated sewage. That kind of rotten egg smell. California Assembly Bill 617 was passed in 2017. This bill directed the State Air Resources Board to come up with a community air monitoring program. Part of that program led to identifying disadvantaged communities are communities that are overburdened with air pollution and pollution in general. This map here on this slide shows those census tracts in San Diego County that are identified to be within the top 25% in this kind of screening tool that the state developed. And the top 25% is what they're using as a disadvantaged community. You can see that along the San Diego Bay. There's quite a few communities as well as along the border and El Cajon at most of our tribal sites. We move on to the next slide. This AB 617 program required us to kind of nominate certain census tracts to be a part of this program. The Air District, working with some local environmental justice activist groups, nominated what we refer to as the Fortside community, which is located just kind of on the east side of San Diego Bay. That includes communities prior to Logan Heights, Sherman Heights, and West National City. This community was accepted into the program, and we'll get into kind of what that means in a little bit. Just last year, the international border was accepted into this program. So those are the border outlines. The Air District then works with businesses and residents in these areas to develop a community steering committee, which we go on the next slide. We'll show pictures of these meetings that we have with community residents, stakeholders, business owners, other government agencies to discuss and hear about air quality concerns from those communities and develop strategies to mitigate and reduce those emissions. And so this is some slides some pictures that we took from the International Border Steering Committee that we hold on a monthly basis. It's open to the public. You don't have to be a resident in those defined border areas or community areas to attend the meeting. It's open, anybody can attend, but you have to be a resident within that boundary to be a voting member. We go to the next slide. We'll talk about what does the Community Air Protection Program does. The first thing we do is we hear input, and it's very much a collaboration between the residents and the steering committee and the Air District in terms of developing the first plan, which is the Community Air Monitoring Plan. So what is that? That is where we receive input from the community about what are their air quality concerns. You can hear a lot about diesel engines and diesel exhaust in the international border area. We hear about the literacy Q1 was that. Those were the two biggest concerns down in that area was the wait time at the border, truck, and the odor. So what we did was we listened to the concerns. We then come up with sampling methodologies, plans, bring that back to the community, we present that. We basically, they vote on what they want to do, and then we implement that as on the Air District side of it. And we write that up as what we refer to as the camp. As data scientists, we are super acronym happy. So we like that we're acronym on everything. The Community Air Monitoring Plan is that first plan. Once we implement that and we start sampling, we start doing that, we start getting data. The other thing that we do is like, great, that data is useful, it's helpful, but what else? Right, and that is to mitigate, to reduce. And so we come up with the Community Emissions Reduction Program. This is a series of goals to actually try to reduce emissions, reduce cancer risks, reduce health risks in the communities by actually developing plans, following through on those plans, working with the appropriate authorities. It's not Air District, maybe it's with Caltrans, maybe it's with the city, maybe it's all of us to do that and set targets, deadlines, and follow through. And so that's what we're actively working with the international borders community on the emission reduction plan. And a big part of that is also going to be dealing with and addressing the odor issue that you want to provide. So if we go on to the next slide, we talk about, now this is going to be specifically for the Tier 1 River Valley, the sampling program and the methodologies that we wanted to, we keep hearing from the residents that, the odors are unbearable, it's leading to headache, nausea, so on and so forth, affecting their quality of life, their ability to sleep, their ability to enjoy the outdoors. We were able to secure funding from the Environmental Protection Agency and their Border 2025 program to get some funding to monitor for the odors that are coming from the River Valley. River Valley is not known for having a lot of power and infrastructure in there, and so we wanted to make sure that the program, the instruments that we bought and obtained was really kind of self-contained, solar powered, batteries, work off the cellular network, so that way the data can get the data in real time and not just have to go out there and collect it on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. The instruments that we got was able to monitor for the list there, hydrogen sulfide being the primary driver. That's that compound that gives you that rotten egg smell. Sulfur dioxide is what hydrogen sulfide ultimately gets transformed into in the atmosphere. A total volatile organic compounds is another series of compounds that could be toxic to people's health. Carbon monoxide from combustion, nitrogen dioxide, that's also from combustion as well. Wind speed, wind direction is always good, so that way you can kind of try to pinpoint, is there more than one source of compounds coming from that area? You can see what kind of concentration versus wind direction, and then as well as just temperature, pressure, and humidity. So the other thing that we're looking for is that the instrumentation that we wanted to acquire needs to be able to detect these compounds at concentrations that are useful. In this case, we found that the odor limit to detect hydrogen sulfide is 10 parts per billion. And this equipment is able to measure down to I think 1 or less than 1 parts per billion. So it should be definitely sufficient. So if we go into the next slide, we've already deployed one of our 6 sensors that we have at the red dot. That's the San Diego Fire Station number 29. It's right on the 5 freeway, right next to the 5 freeway. We've also talked with the mayor of Imperial Beach, and she graciously allowed us to deploy a sensor at City Hall, which is the blue dot up there. And then the other 4 kind of boxes there are the other locations that we want to deploy sensors, either one or more there. So those are the locations that we're kind of looking at. We definitely want to put one within the River Valley itself, kind of, where the emissions are kind of coming from and starting from, and then also in the community as that kind of leads the River Valley and interests the community. So we move on to the next slide, please. This is actually not this one. There you go. So this is the solar panel. There's a small battery here that then powers it. This is the actual sensor itself, this kind of white trapezoid. And then there's the wind speed, wind direction, and temperature relative to -11. So this is kind of what it looks like. If we move on to the next slide, I don't remember if we have the secondary side. So this is where we deployed, we have 6 of them. You can kind of see here's all the wind speed directions. Here we got the solar panel. And then right here, there's 1, 2, there's another one behind here, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is at our San Ysidro location. We recently put this trailer here that includes a lot of other air monitoring equipment. This one here measures PM2.5 particulates. This one's a filter-based measurement. Actually, both of these are filter-based one. This one, we can put canisters there and get a gas sample and then analyze it for that. This one's an inlet that then transport gas and air down into the inside to do more gaseous analysis on the inside for nitrogen dioxide. Go on to the next slide. So now, $1 million question: what does the data show? We deployed these about a month ago, and what is the data looking like? The data here is in this blue line. You can kind of see it's kind of going up and down, peaks and valleys. And then there's 2 horizontal bars here. This bar here at 10 parts per billion, that's the odor threshold. So if this data here is above that, you should be able to smell it. If it's below that, maybe not. Depends on your individual nose.
This is all San Ysidro.
This is at all San Ysidro. So right now, this is all just at San Ysidro. We haven't deployed it elsewhere. This line here at 30, this is the California Air Resources Board, California state standard for hydrogen sulfide. And that threshold is not a health-based standard, it's a nuisance, odor nuisance standard. So above this is where it's gonna start bothering you. It's gonna be, you're gonna say, this is unpleasant to be around. And below that is what they're saying is it should be, you should smell it, but it shouldn't be nuisance. It should be a nuisance. If we go on to the next slide, like I said, we have all 6 of them out there. And so we are now looking at kind of how they agree or disagree. So when we send them out to different sites, we can say like, this red one here rates high compared to this green one here. So when we deploy them to different sites, we want to know that difference. This is part of our quality control, quality assurance check. And so again, we have the thresholds here. And you can kind of see on the previous slide there that we are experiencing just in that one couple-week time period where we're seeing above that we're exceeding that. There you go. Okay. Did I never have it on the whole time? Okay, let's start from the beginning. So this level here at 30, which we saw in the previous slide, was exceeded a few times just in that couple of weeks. Whereas in this couple of weeks time period, it hasn't. These are the things that we're going to be looking at. Turn it off. Not push button. So that's kind of what we're seeing is sometimes we're exceeding it, sometimes we're not exceeding it. But that's what we're going to be looking at from going forth, and then kind of trying to look at not only the hydrogen sulfide levels, but how it compares to correlates with the other pollutants that we're measuring. And if we go on to the next slide, what are our next steps? Our next step is getting this data on our website so you all can see it in real time. These instruments collect data and present on an hourly basis, and just want to update our website every hour, a few minutes after the hour with this data. We're having some communication issues with the vendors, so we're hoping to get that resolved fairly soon in the next week or so. We're also going to be looking at, like I said, the quality assurance and quality control, looking at how all sensors agree or disagree with each other. The good thing is they all track each other. Just some of them are reading a little bit higher than others, and that's kind of typical for this type of low cost instrumentation, is that they don't always agree 100% on a one-to-one basis. So with that in mind, we're going to be procuring another type of instrument that is a little bit more robust, and we can challenge it with some standards from a gas cylinder to make sure it's reading and accurate, and then kind of have a correlation factor between it and the rest of the sensors that we deploy elsewhere. And then we're also going to be looking at deploying sensors at different locations within Imperial Beach and San Ysidro, and then doing data analysis and presenting that to the public and meetings like this and with the International Border Steering Committee. And I guess we go on the next slide, and that's the middle person there. That's my email address. Kevin Bradley is the senior chemist. He works under me. It's gonna be he and his team that's gonna be doing most of this analysis. And then my boss is Domingo Hill, who is the deputy director at ABCD, who oversees, my division as well as others. And that's that. If we have time, we'll definitely, take some questions. I don't know, Leslie, if I'm gonna be moderating questions or if you wanna do it.
We can start with, Ed.
Thank you, Ed Spriggs, former city council, Vero Beach. It's on, okay. Thank you very much for the presentation. And as a resident and in a community that's on the front lines, I have to kind of moderate my response to what you're saying, understanding that you're a scientist and you're taking a scientific view of this, which by its nature is supposed to be objective and detached. But many of the people in this room, and certainly in my community, it isn't just a matter of the odor. It's a matter of the health risks associated with airborne pollution. So this program started in 2017, 2019, 2020. Scripps did an analysis of that demonstrated that there was aerosolized pollution directly carrying what's in the ocean inland. More study needs to be done regarding what the health risks are, what the health impacts are, and how far inland it goes before it ceases to be a health problem. I would hope, having said that, number one, that your work would tie in with the further work that's needed to assess the health risks from the airborne pathogens that are affecting everyone, whether we can smell them or not. Okay. So it isn't just a matter of smell, it's a matter of this constant flow of aerosolized spray and from the ocean that also affects Coronado. Secondly, so I just wanted your comment on that. But secondly, and that's the tie-in with this larger work that needs to be done regarding the impacts, health impacts. The second thing is tying your work in with actual work and remedies such as those of the IBWC, the Environmental Protection Agency, the projects and the that are planned, and whether these are going to, if you look at them from the health standpoint, the aerosolized, the odor standpoint, which ones are going to make a difference sooner? Right. Because these, there's a lot that can be done, and how we prioritize ought to be around the greatest impact on human health. You know, that would be my view anyway. So tying it in, using your data and other data that can bolster the arguments for funding for solutions, as opposed to pure science, is really, I think, what I'd like to have you comment on.
Yeah, I mean, you know, one of the things that, you know, we wanted to do is we hear a lot from the residents directly, and from the steering committee about how the odors are affecting their health, right? And so those are anecdotal evidence that something is missed. Now we're trying to get the hard science to back up those claims, right? And when you get both together, it's harder for the responsible parties to ignore it. And that's why a big part of our mission for this project is going to be gathering that data. And we don't have controls over this issue, unfortunately. This is not something that ABC can solve, right? And so we are going to be advocating that from our end, which is unfortunately, it's not, right? It's, you know, you're going to be pushing that data, being more, look, there is an issue here. Look, we can see it. Look, how many times are we going to violate the standard before something gets done? You know, it's harder to sometimes ignore the data it is just very right? It's not, no one's complaining. Your real issues is affecting quality of life in San Diego, Coronado, South San Diego for a long time, right? And it needs to get addressed. And there's issues and there's ways to try to get that done. And unfortunately, just local voices hasn't been enough. And so we're hoping that bringing some of that data will help push it forward.
Tying in with the aerosol study.
Yeah, so tying it in with the aerosol study, you know, that's what Kim Prather's group is doing, Professor Kim Prather, you know, what she's looking at, that's completely outside of our realm of expertise. But we'd be more than happy to do collaborations and share data and work with other health agencies, with the county of San Diego to see, determine, is this something that, you know, like Dr. Prather said, is this causing health? No, there needs to be more research done, right? And so that was what she said in her paper. That's what she presented at the Coastal Water Commission. There's more research that needs to be done. We're detecting it, but is it really detrimental to health? No one knows at this point. And so she needs, and other people who are doing that research need to do more to make that determination.
Have members from the audience that have questions. Hi, thanks for your report. Have you overlapped the tide heights with your data to see if it's particularly at a low tide that
We have not. But
because the estuary, once there's no water in it, it's just solids. It's solids that have dropped down. And I think that could be a very high correlation.
That's a good point, because one thing on this slide that people were really quick to notice that it's about a 12-hour cycle between the peaks and the valleys. And that's the tide cycle. And we were kind of wondering, you know, is it, you know, we're gonna have more and hey, if you guys collecting and releasing every 12 hours, and, you know, like, is there anything from the plant that's done that? But that's a good question with the tide. If the river valley is going dry, then that could be where now you have more land that's being exposed in the middle of the day or something like that. That's been causing those emissions.
Thank you. Quick question. When are you going to deploy your sensors in the river valley or near the water where
As soon as we
get
get
that data?
as soon as we can. We need, you know, we need to come up with land use agreements. We need to then formalize those agreements, then we need to deploy them. And so,
Well, you can go on our side of the border and put one.
but you can't just put things on.
Okay.
Like it's-
So like a year,
we're one, maybe less. We gotta identify where we wanna put the sites. We gotta then identify the landowner, whether it's a county park or a national park or, you know, a residential or, you know, the city light pole or whatever. Work with them, get their one to agree for us to be able to put it, and then draft the language of the agreement, which typically involves lawyers, so that's, you know, back and forth with that language, and then it's a matter of the deployment. But our goal is in the next couple of months to have all 6 of them out at different locations.
thank you.
Hi, my name is Leon Benham. I'm with the Citizens for Coastal Conservancy out of Imperial Beach. And I brought this in. You see these stop the stink signs that we have, and can you hold that for a second? I'll just speak up loud. On the back of every one of these signs is a map of the valley. And as a resident and as a person that grew up in the valley, the water that used to flow into the valley is now being pushed up against the homes, and it's ponding. And you go down there and there's 12-foot, 10-foot high walls of foam, white foam. You can't stand to be there. I mean, so if you go back to your picture, if you can, if you look, the spikes are usually at night. The basically when the comes in the morning, the onshore flow starts and it starts mixing and pushing the air. At night, we generally have still air, and so it just sits because it's heavy. And so if you go to those spikes, I would imagine those spikes are basically, because down at the bottom are days.
Right.
And so it corresponds to night and then day.
Right, it's about 7 a.m. and about 7 a.m. plus my
Right.
couple hours,
So
to 7 p.m. a couple.
That's
plus
what
my-
we're experiencing, and the location of your sensors, as you pointed out, is that, that you went down on Saturn Boulevard to the first, river crossing for the 50-year river crossing that's there. You would see, you wouldn't be able to stand there. And that's what's on the back of these signs, every one of these signs that's throughout Imperial Beach. And to show you what it used to look like, because the river used to be consolidated into like this. So you can imagine this is an 1,800 square mile drainage. We get 650,000 cubic yards of sand and rock on average that comes down this valley in 21 days. And so by spreading the water out over the valley, a prescription to solving this and returning this river valley back to a dry riverbed is really the solution. Because during the winter, during those 21 days of rain, there's so much flow that would be concentrated, it would blow out and basically, it's called scour. That 650,000, and if you can imagine a dump truck has 12 yards. And so basically, if you would have just the back bed of a truck, it would be 80 miles long. That's the amount of sand, rocks, and gravel that comes down this valley in a year. So by redirecting the river, which the county did in 1993, it really set up this problem. And so, this is really great data. But as a citizen that's been going through this, it's taking too long. I mean, it's one thing to have the data and you can see it, and that's great. But to put in the actual plans that are going to solve this, so we don't have standing ponds of water, which is best management practice in almost any country, anywhere else, standing ponds of water are bad. They accumulate, especially when they're tainted with sewage. So it's a mosquito problem, it's a smell problem, and also the ecology of the river is just being ruined because all this ponds of sewage, we don't even, I think we're down to about 5% of the birds that we used to get in the valley are no longer there. They would rather go out to the Imperial Valley. So I just, we kind of know because we live there what needs to be done. And we hope your data will help facilitate a fast action plan that we can have on the ground to implement a correction to this problem. So thank you very much.
No questions? Yeah, thank you for that comment.
Baron Parlow, founder of Stop the Food, Imperial Beach resident, former United States International Boundary Water Commission Citizens Forum board member. A lot of people are looking at this like you're describing the water we're drowning in without a solution, which the work is necessary. The technology is very necessary. The damage has already been done over years of such endurance. Is there any plan or any program that is compatible with this technology where you can run scenarios of calculated flows from the past with meteorological data to coincide and run a scenario to tell what we were exposed to yesterday? Because we're finding out today that we're sick and we might die tomorrow.
That's, I don't have the answer to that. I don't know.
My name is Jerry Weiss. I've got a question. Why did you put these monitoring stations so far away from the ocean, which is where a lot of this where it starts from and where it becomes airborne at. I realize it comes all the way through Mexico, but it empties in the ocean, and then especially for IB and Coronado and some of the others, it starts at the ocean. So you're about a mile away from the ocean to City Hall, maybe not quite a mile. But can you get them closer?
Yeah, I mean, we started with the San Ysidro site because that site, I didn't mention, but that site was in development prior to us even starting this program. And so that site is a dual purpose site. It serves our regional monitoring needs. And because of that site already existed, we decided to put a sensor there, and then now we're looking at other locations. And to kind of answer your question about, is the ocean the source? And I would say that's more the endpoint, because the source is really coming from Mexico and the river's coming in. And so it ends up at the ocean. You obviously get some transport, coming up from the south during certain months because of that non-working treatment plant down in Mexico. That sewage that gets there just gets pumped out and then floats north. So there's definitely multiple points of where it starts. But, we definitely want to include a wider range, and that's why we're looking at, the city hall. We're also looking at potentially at the estuary visitor center, which is almost at the beach.
Yeah.
We have time for one more quick question for Dr. Soderman.
No, I'm not really sure what the protocol is. I really think we should do board member questions first, and then we should do the audience questions. It's very disjointed and strange.
So I just have a series of fairly brief questions for you, but like data based on what you're actually talking about, what you're showing here today. So when you start off, and I went into this quite a bit on Sandag as a board member, you mentioned a couple particular facts about the funding came partially, I believe you said, from an assembly bill that talked about disadvantaged communities. And then secondarily, you said an EPA border grant. Okay, so when people are asking questions, how did the monitors end up in certain places? When you showed the map, the Imperial Beach and Coronado didn't fit into those two categories. Is that correct?
Yeah, you're right. Coronado is not according to the state, not a disadvantaged community, and essentially with Imperial Beach, you can go back up to.
Right, so and my point with that is, and I get it, you're trying to do a great job, you're a hard worker, I appreciate your candor with us. But for my constituents, Imperial Beach's constituents, what we're really here for, right, is the sewage issue and the effects on our communities. That's what we're mainly focused on. So when we try to cut to the chase, through this information, what we're trying to find out is how do we get these monitors to where, I know you're saying it's the end effect, not the start of the pollution or of the border crossing. But we live, like where we live and near the water is what we want to know what's happening there. And so what we're trying to find out is, okay, you have a certain budget, we're working within certain requirements. We get it. It's not your fault, but like how much do these things cost? How do we move forward? How do we monitor our communities where our citizens live and see if we can get that data to do as Mr. Spriggs was saying, have that potentially be part of something that pushes forward, as you were saying too, real data that pushes forward maybe a solution that helps us get to where we need to be.
Yes. So I guess let me backtrack a little bit to answer your first question about the funding. So the AB 617 funding is for disadvantaged communities. This particular project was funded by the EPA Border 2025. The border, when all of here talk about the border, we're talking probably like, really close to the border. EPA's definition of the border is 100 kilometers, which is almost goes up to Camp Pendleton. So almost all of San Diego County is eligible for Border 2025 project. So if we had a project and we wanted to do something in Escondido, that would still be considered a border project. funding. So, deploying a sensor from this project in Coronado is absolutely perfectly fine from a standpoint of funding. Same with Imperial Beach, even though it's not technically part of the border community that we have with the state program.
And yeah, I appreciate that. I know you're constrained by a certain amount of budgeting and numbers, and that's really when I heard you present before, previously at an EP meeting, my question was, what's the process, or how do we get more monitors, or what's the facts about it? So for instance, I don't disagree with, you say Imperial Beach City Hall. I do agree with what some of the other people have said. Imperial Beach Pier, the coast, on the water, that's essential to me. But if we're constrained by 6 and we have 6 locations, I have no idea. How do we go beyond on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we, as part of these type of meetings, we hear, like, we want a sensor in Coronado, we want one on the beach. I had a meeting with County of San Diego and their public health department, and they're saying, do you have background stuff? Do you have one in El Cajon or one in Escondido? Is it higher? Is it pervasive everywhere? Is that, and we're like, well, we would love to be able to put these things everywhere and have background sites at Alpine and Escondido and, Kearney Mesa to look at their, North City wastewater treatment and see if there's emissions coming from there. And like you said, we're constrained by budget. But hearing from you all, not just elected officials, but also from the public, this now influences where do we spend our discretionary funding for the next fiscal year? And should we have more? Do we need more? And we're hearing, hey, we need to have it here, we need to have it here, we need to have it there. Then that's gonna influence our decision of 6 isn't enough, we need more.
It is a final comment that I hope you keep in the back of your mind or help let us know who we need to let know this. But well, I think in general, most people agree the disadvantaged communities that have been suffering need resources, right? Barrio Logan, et cetera. But pollution doesn't know economic boundaries. So if we have 100,000, passenger vehicles drive through what looks like our quaint Orange Avenue every day, and only 120,000 cross the border every day, but we only look at the border and only spend money on the border, we're missing a huge fact. And the same is true with the ocean pollution in the air. We need to ensure that we look at where the pollution is. And I think that SANDAG board members are coming along with that concept that it doesn't matter, that pollution ends up somewhere. Okay, so it's generated here, but ends up in Barrio Logan, not looking at here is a huge mistake. And so, and to the extent that is something we can try to keep in mind, facts actually matter. Thank you for answering my questions, candidly. I appreciate it.
And I look at the gray box, the rectangle there, and I know because I went to school right at the bottom of that, right near Saturn, where the river is shown and where the wall of foam is at. There's Southwest High School. Right at the corner of Leon and Saturn, it's Berry Elementary School. And then not too far away is Nicolop, and of course, all the schools that are in San Isidro. So I understand that they're like most things, basically young people and elderly are the most they're susceptible. And because they're growing minds, growing bodies. So I would certainly recommend that we put sensors there because, that's closest to the source of the pollution or the aerosols. And that would be my recommendation.
Thank you. Last thought. Just one last thought. My earlier comments were trying to encourage you to tie your work in with other data collection and studies, et cetera, especially around the aerosolized pollution. From a kind of technical standpoint,
the placement of your monitors can tie in with that very well. For example, if you put a monitor at the Imperial Beach Pier and another one a mile inland, let's say City Hall or somewhere else, and you measure certain compounds, pathogens, whatever, and look at the different amplitude, you know, of those impacts, you will then be able to help us understand how these things propagate and dissipate as they move inland. And give those scientists some evidence that they could use in monitoring the health impacts, looking for certain higher level impacts as you move away from the source of the aerosolized problem, which is the surface zone. So I think people are right to say that's the source of that problem, but the water itself that's polluted does indeed, you know, come from the Tijuana River and the river valley, et cetera. So everybody's got this, I think, correct, but how you think through the strategic placement of these monitors for these different key outcomes, I think is going to be very important going forward. Thank you for that comment.
Need to move on to the next presentation. We'll have time a little bit later during the public comment period for additional questions. The next presentation will be given by Isela Canava, who is Principal Engineer of the Operations Department for the International Boundary and Water Commission. She is joining us virtually.
Good evening. Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay, just want to make sure every
Yes, we can
audience
hear
can
you.
hear me. Okay,
Yes.
thank you. And I apologize for not being there in person. I know Commissioner Ginette wanted to give this presentation, but unfortunately is unable to. So she asked me to step in and give the presentation on her behalf. Some of this will be some similar information that she's given recently in the San Diego Regional Water Quality Board and the Coastal Commission, but there are some updates that we will be providing to you. So the way this presentation was formatted, I'll first be going over the issues that we've been facing at the plant due to the excess flows that we've been having for some time now. I'll give an overview of the expansion project of where we are. I'll give you an update on the actions and progress that we've made on the work to achieve compliance. An update, I'll discuss Minute 328 and the support that we've received from the administration on the expansion. And then I'll follow with some concluding slides. Leslie, do you want me to put up the slides or do you? I can share my screen.
Whatever's easier for you. I have the presentation up.
Okay, hold on. I can share my screen, and that way I can just forward it when I need to. I'm sorry. I'm navigating through this. Let me put it on presentation mode and just know if you all are seeing it. It's taking some time to get a presentation mode. I don't know how to take this off. Okay. Okay, and I already kind of noted how we're going to format the slide. So one of the initial problems are where we are right now with the plant, the fact that we're not in compliance, which many of you are aware of, is due to the excess flows that we've been receiving from the pipeline rupture that was had in July of 2022. There was 2 pipelines that were ruptured during that time. One of the pipelines was fixed within 2 weeks, but there's one pipeline that has remained out of operation since then, and that's a loss of 25 MGD capacity in the Tijuana sanitation system. These flows were diverted to the South Bay plant as excess flows, and they've also been diverted down the Tijuana River as transboundary flows. So this is an overview of what it's caused to the plant and an overview of the flows. So as you can see, the black line is the transboundary flows that we received in 2023 so far. Orange line is 2022. Blue line is 2021. And then the yellow line 2020 and the green is 2019. So the flows we've received in 2023 have been significantly higher than the previous years. As a result of these excess flows, we've been out of compliance in the plant in terms of the monthly average effluent flow that we get to the plant. Many of you may be aware that the plant was designed to only handle 25 MGD with a peaking factor, but it wasn't designed to consistently handle a flow over 25 MGD. So when that pipeline broke, we were handling an average of 31 going up to 33. So we were handling flows over 25 MGD for several months. Then you see a lull there between March and April when we were below, but that was the wet season. So PB-SELA was off and the flows were going down the, transboundary, down the Tijuana River. And then you see again, May, June, July, and August where we were again above that. What this caused was permit exceedances in the amount of flow, and it also caused water quality permit exceedances. One of the challenges that we've had in the plant is we've had little investment in terms of capital funding for the plant over the years. We've recently identified 100 to 150 million in urgent rehabilitation needs. And as many of you may be aware, the expansion cost has greatly exceeded the original estimates. And I will be going over that in a little more detail. This is what the excess flows, the challenges it's caused at the plant. We had issues with clogging of bar screens with trash and sediment. We had excessive wear and tear of the influent pumps, where we only had 3 of 6 pumps that were operational. We overloaded our grit chambers, overloaded the primary sedimentation tanks, where we're at the point right now where there's no solids removal. And then our solids started carrying over into secondary treatment. And as mentioned, we were getting permit exceedances in effluent volume quality. Our steps forward for South Bay compliance. Due to these issues, we put a plan together on how to achieve compliance due to these excess flows. One of the things that was done in FY23 was realign $10 million to South Bay for some of the needed improvements. This work includes replacement of junction box 1 as a design build project, complete rehabilitation of all the mechanical parts for our primary sedimentation tanks. They have long lead items, but we've already ordered those parts. We've cleaning out the primary sedimentation tanks and replacement of influent pumps number 1 and number 5. I mentioned the 42-inch wastewater line. The estimated completion of the repair of the line has been ongoing, and it is on track to be completed in November and in operation by the end of November. Okay, this will reduce transboundary flows and it'll reduce the excess flows to the plant. Okay, so we were already getting excess flows to the plant and it had already impacted the plant, and we had identified the needs to the plant and we're working towards some of those solutions. Then in August, we had Tropical Storm Hilary. And because of the amount of flow we received in such a short time, there was a huge influx of debris and it overwhelmed our plant and caused additional issues on our plant. We exceeded the design flow capacity of the plant by 100% for 6 hours and 320% for 8 hours. We got up to 80 MGD, which is actually the max that our meters can read during that time. It filled our equalization tanks within the first hour of the storm. Our secondary treatment was bypassed. As a result of secondary treatment, we had to bypass it for 10 hours with flow discharging directly through the outfall. And then we had the flooding of the headworks, and we had pump and electrical issues due to that. And I'll show you some pictures on that in a minute. What this led to was excess buildup in the wet wells, tanks, and basins of trash, sediment, and debris. And pretty much we had trash and debris pretty much went through our entire system at the plant, which caused issues with pumps in the primary system and secondary system, and just entirely throughout the plant. So, and these are some pictures. To the left, of course, you'll see the dry conditions, and on the right, you'll see a picture of our bar screen area at the beginning of the storm. The red line is where the water got at the peak of the storm, which was approximately 8 feet. Okay. And this is a picture of the influent pump system. On the left, you'll see how it's supposed to look. And on the right, you'll see where it was inundated. The picture is at the beginning of the storm. The red line is where the water got at the peak. So I don't know if you can tell, but pretty much we have electrical lines. Well, you have the electrical systems of the pumps, but we have electrical lines on the walls, and it got to the electrical system up to those lines, and it caused issues with our system. As a result of Hillary 2, we had issues with our Canyon Collector pump station system. As many of you are aware, it caused our Hollister pump station to stop operations. We lost all 4 of our pumps there. Okay. So what did we do? Immediately after, it was about a day or two, we started assessing what the tropical storm Hillary did. And as the days went by, there was more and more issues that came to light. So we developed a plan. We looked at everything that was inoperable, the issues we were having, and divided in between high risk, medium risk, and low risk, and developed a plan to immediately start getting to a point where we had redundancy. We had the minimum we needed for the plant to keep in operation. So what we did first is issued an emergency contract to get the emergency pump and electrical repairs done at the headworks. We did a contract to work to replace the influent pumps. We had already ordered 2 pumps over 10 months ago, and those are scheduled to arrive in November and December. But under this recovery plan, we ordered 4 additional pumps. Okay. We also looked at replacing all inoperable pumps throughout the plant. This is the waste activated sludge system, the non-potable water system, and the Hollister pump station. As part of element number 1, we did emergency work at Hollister pump also, and we were able to get one pump back in operation. And I'll go through the slides of where we are on some of this work, okay? We also issued contracts to rehabilitate our sludge storage tanks and our pumping systems and some piping. So we also looked at what we would need to be for preparedness. If we got another storm of this magnitude, what will we need to do? And that was $32 million. What we did is we are prioritizing this work as part of the central rehab under the expansion. So this expansion work is going to be, done in phases, and the work that we have noted for preparedness would be part of the initial phase. And most of this is within the headwork system. What I'd like to know is that $8 million, we did realign funding in FY23 in order to get this work done. So we pulled it from other works across the border in order to address this. Okay, now getting into the expansion project. In 2022, the USIBWC hired Arcadis, who is a very highly ranked engineering firm in the nation, and has a ton of experience in wastewater treatment facilities, to do an assessment of the plant, look at the largest possible expansion that we could do with the funding that we had, which was at that time 300 million, refine the estimates, and they're going to stay on through design and construction to ensure that the design and construction firms reach all their milestones. As part of what Arcadis did was initially do that assessment of our existing plant. So I had given you a number of $100 and $150 million of the immediate needs of the plant. This was based on the information from the Arcadis study. This estimate, we received that information, the final estimate for this work in June of 2023. And since then, we've been working, to get information out there and meet with congressionals and all that to give them information on the needs of the plant and the needs for the expansion. So what we are doing for the expansion plant that will reduce the transboundary flows to 90%, we are going to expand the capacity to 50 MGD. We are going from 25 MGD to 50 MGD. We're going to rehabilitate all the essential processes and infrastructure needed for the expansion, and look at the immediate needs of the plant to include those works that we identified under the preparedness. We will add the peaking factor to have an additional capacity to treat temporary flows up to 75 MGD and still meet permit requirements. The total cost for this is $600 million plus or minus 30%. Because we're still not in design and construction, that's why you have that contingency factor. Okay. So next steps in our rehab and expansion. As noted, the project exceeded its USMCA funding availability by $310 million. We have a plan. The construction will be phased based on availability of funds. Currently, our engineering department is finalizing the procurement documents. The pre-solicitation notice has been issued. It was issued on October 20th, 2023. We plan to solicit bids this fall for design and construction. The final construction schedule will be developed by the design firm and construction contractor that are selected when the solicitation goes out. There will be opportunities will be identified to initiate operations incrementally to allow for gradual and earlier increase of treatment capacity. I'm sorry. And then what this does not include is anaerobic digestion. The estimate to go to anaerobic digestion was close to $910 million, but IBWC and EPA are working with NADBank on a funding strategy for the anaerobic digesters and energy recovery. Okay. So I wanted to give you an update where we are on the permit and what has happened since, we're last reported some of this work. The thing that USIBWC has been doing to address the violations, of course, we're self-reporting as required by our permit. We realigned the funds, and we have a plan in progress to address work required due to the impact of the excess flows from the pipeline break and from the Tropical Storm Hillary. The Tijuana River Valley Monitoring Work Plan is being addressed through Minute 320. The USIBWC had contracted a secretary over a year ago to oversee the Minute 320 binational activities. We are also holding binational meetings and correspondence to Mexico to urge the repairs of that pipeline that caused the excess flows. So the original timeline that we were getting for the repair of this pipeline was the spring of 2024. And through constant urging and diplomatic means, and also the consulate and Ambassador Salazar, there's been a lot of pressure to expedite this work. And as a result, we're seeing that this pipeline will now be completed in November. They did, like many of us are having we're having issues with material and long lead items, but they were able to begin that work, and many of you have seen the progress, maybe on some updates that we've been providing some updates on that. We have received notice of violations on September 5th and on October 27th for effluent exceedances from the San Diego Regional Water Quality Board. And there was a draft time schedule order issued by the Water Quality Board for public comment on October 31st, 2023. And that pretty much what it notes is the same information that we're providing here, is that we plan to have, based on our plan, but based on all the lead items for the materials, we plan to have this plant in compliance by August 15th of 2024. Okay, I wanted to give you an update on the work that we're doing to achieve compliance. The JB1 rehabilitation. And what this junction box does is it pretty much is able to control the flows to the plant. That way we're not in a situation where we're getting the kind of flows that we received during the hurricane. Unfortunately, if they don't go to the plant, they'll be going to the river or elsewhere, but at least we'll be protecting the infrastructure of our plant. And this is just part of the work that we need to do. We have a design build contract that was awarded. It was awarded for an amount of $5.8 million, and it's scheduled to be completed in early 2025. Our influent pumps. I had already told you that we had ordered 2 pumps prior to the tropical storm, but as part of our recovery plan for Hillary, we're going to order 4 additional pumps. The headworks have 6 influent pumps there. We need 2 minimum for normal operations. And right now, the current status is we have 3 pumps operational. Immediately after Tropical Storm Hillary, we only had 1 pump, and we immediately issued that emergency CLIN, and our contractor was able to get a second going and recently got a third going. So that's very positive news. And the pumps that we ordered months ago, we have 1 scheduled for delivery in November and 1 scheduled for December of 2023. And as noted, we are ordering 4 additional pumps so we can have that redundancy that is desperately needed for this plant. Our primary sedimentation tanks. As I noted earlier, there is no solids removal right now out of our tanks. They've been inoperable since early 2023. They were completely filled due to the excess flows. We need a minimum of 3 PSTs for normal operation. The current status is we got the parts we needed for the first one, PST5, in October 2023. What we did is we issued a contract to first clean the tanks and then do an inspection. Once we inspected number 5, we found that it needed a complete rehabilitation of all the mechanical parts. So all these parts were ordered for all the tanks, and our contractor was able to expedite at least for the first tank. So we got those the chains for PST5 in October. So that rehab is starting now, and we expect it to be online in by the middle of January 2024. Once that's online, we can start cleaning the cleaning of PST number 1 and number 2 and start the rehab immediately after that. And we're expected to come into permit compliance because of this work on the PST by the summer of 2024. Hollister Pump Station. Hollister Pump Station diverts the flows from the Goat Canyon and Smuggler's Gulch Canyon collectors to the South Bay Treatment Plant. We usually get flows from 1 MGD and is about 4% of the total flows to the plant. 4 pumps, we have 4 pumps total, and all were inoperable after Tropical Storm Hilary. And this is where we are on that. We were able to, within the 30 days, we were able to get 1 existing pump restored on September 19th. We did order a new pump that our contractor was able to locate and expedite. And that was put in on September 29th, and that's when the pump station became operational. So this was one of our greatest priorities, and we got to get the pump station back in operation. We did receive an additional pump. However, we're awaiting installation. I believe that California Parks is doing some cleaning in the canyon, so we're waiting for that to be done, and we will go in and do the installation of that pump. And then we are ordering additional pumps to have that 4th pump and have the redundancy we need here. Okay. I wanted to just give you an update of the Minute 328. As many of you are aware, Minute 328 is where the U.S. Agreed to do the expansion of the plant, and there was works in Mexico that were agreed by the Mexican government to be done. As many of you are aware, this really needs to be a comprehensive solution between both countries in order to address the sanitation issues in the San Diego area. So this is a very, I just wanted to let you know that there are recurring meetings at very high levels between both governments. You have the U.S. ambassador. This was the first of many meetings. You have the U.S. ambassador. You have the chief of North America for the Mexico's Ministry of Foreign Relations. You have the regional administrator, Martha Guzman here, Commissioner Gined, the ambassador. It's a very high level meeting that there's a group that's formed that they want to continually meet, and they are meeting in order to make sure that there's traction in both countries to continue the progress of these projects. And I just wanted to give you an update on where Mexico is on some of their projects. San Antonio de los Buenos wastewater treatment plant. The latest information we have is that it'll go out to bid by the end of 2023. The repair of the ruptured pipeline at Smuggler's Gulch will be done by the end of November 2023. Work is underway on the international collector along the border. They have work underway on their Antigua force main. The Oriente collector has been completed, and their pumping plant projects, PB Stila, the work's been completed there, and PB Laureles is in the procurement process. Their other projects are pending NatBank certification. And I wanted to highlight some of the support we've received from the administration. On October 11th, we had a visit to the plant by the Assistant Secretary of State for the Western Hemisphere, Brian Nichols. We briefed him on the needs of the rehab and expansion for the plants, and he also got to tour the plant. He also was able to see the ongoing work of the ruptured pipeline in Mexico. In late October 2023, I believe it was October 25th, 310 million was added to a supplemental budget request from President Biden to complete the 50 MGD plant with a peaking factor. And then the Department of State does regularly engage with the Mexican officials to support the continued progress of the Minute 328 projects. And then just a few concluding slides, and I'm sorry this was so long, and I know you're going to have plenty of questions for me. Complying with our discharge permit is a priority for the agency, for the commissioner. We are self-reporting, all the permit violations. We realigned $18 million to address the work due to the excess flows and the Tropical Storm Hilary impacts. this work to achieve compliance is totally independent of the expansion project. And I just want to make sure everybody understands that. And now we are having weekly meetings with the San Diego Regional Water Quality Board. They are going to the plant, they are touring the plant, and they are making sure that we're making progress on our, on our work that we're doing to achieve compliance. We're regularly meeting with Mexico. The US section meets monthly with the Mexican section to make sure there's traction on these projects in Mexico, progress on the pipeline. And, we just continue to apply that pressure to make sure that the work is getting done. And, our communication with stakeholders, that's important to us. We are having these kind of briefings here at the Citizens Forum. Commissioner has done the briefings herself for the regional board, for the Coastal Commission, and many of those are available for you all to review if you'd like to review them. We have these Citizens Forum meetings, 3 per year. We're doing, along with EPA, are doing the public meetings for the USMCA process. And we have our Twitter and email communication. And as we progress on some of our work, we are putting that information out for the public. Other things that we are doing in order to assure we don't get to this situation again, and assure that we can identify the needs and convey that, to the administration, what the needs of the agency are, so we're not underfunded, and make sure we're doing some of the rehab work we continually need on our infrastructure. We're doing a manpower study to see what the needs of the agency is for staffing. We're doing an asset management system plan, agency-wide, and we're doing a capital plan to make sure that we have all the needs of the agency well documented and have the support we need when we go and ask for funding. It'll be a clear-cut plan of what the needs of the agency are. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you for your patience. And I'll open it up for questions.
There was one question requesting clarification, Isela, on slide 13 of your presentation.
Okay, let me go back.
This was asked virtually.
Yes, I'm sorry, and I wasn't tracking the questions as I was giving the presentation. Slide 13, okay.
Slide 13. The question is, the $910 million estimate, is that the cost for only the digesters, or does that include the previous estimated work for the plant expansion of 610 million?
Yeah, that includes the expansion for the 610 plus the digesters. So if we were to do everything included, that would be 100. That would be 910. It's not in addition to.
Okay. Board questions?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. This is Ed Spriggs again from former council member, City of Imperial Beach. Thank you for the detailed presentation. I have 2 questions. The first one has to do with the problems encountered due to the pipeline break and the flooding from Hurricane Hilary. And the second has to do with the funding point you just made. So you showed slides with the red line indicating how the plant was completely swamped, at least the pump area, because of the flows due to the hurricane. It's surprising and kind of counterintuitive that there wasn't a mechanism to prevent the flooding of the plant and the damage to all of the plants, or so much of the plant's expensive infrastructure. Same thing for the pumps that were inundated in the I don't know if it was Gold Canyon, Hollister, the Hollister plant pump station. So the question is, why was, I can imagine the plant is different than the Hollister pump station, but why were both inundated? Weren't there some mechanisms to divert flood waters to prevent that from happening? Number one. Number two, what's going to be different in the future? Because we're going to get more and more as climate change runs its course, we're going to get predictably, everybody, all the scientific community is predicting more frequent and more severe weather events. So
Yes.
there needs to be some sort of mechanism to bypass the plant so that, and the pump station, so that this doesn't happen. So that's the
Yes.
first question. I have
Okay,
one more after
can
you
I,
respond.
let me answer that one and you can ask me the other one so I can make sure I touch on the point. So let's talk about the plant first. There are two items there. So our junction box 1 is inoperable at this time, and it is actually welded in the open position. Should that one, once it gets into operation, we can actually control the flow into the headworks. So the area that was inundated, both the bar screens and the influent pumps are both at the headworks, okay? Our junction box 1 is the work we need to do there will help control that. So the flows we got, I believe it was from the Tijuana sanitation system. It's not, it wasn't necessarily rain flows because PBC was off. So there was impacts to their systems due to the Hurricane Hillary. So we were receiving some of those flows. Now it's a twofold issue. And the reason we actually welded JB1 in the open position was that a few years ago, it was actually in a closed position and only 18 inches open. It was inoperable, but what it was doing, there's a pipeline from Mexico that it was actually causing, I guess it was causing issues with that pipeline. That pipeline is also in a fragile state and needs to be repaired, and Mexico is already repairing it. So once that pipeline is repaired and JB1 is repaired, we will have the mechanism to control the flows into the plant. That is important for us. And that's why that is some of the work, some of the money that was realigned for that. Now, for the canyon collection system, I don't think we have a mechanism, and Morgan can chime in if needed. So it was the amount of trash and sediment in such a short period that we received, and we actually got this entangled into our pumps that caused issues with the pumps. I don't believe we have any mechanism in place to control that kind of trash and debris. And it was also something I don't think we've seen in that area for, I'm not sure, for some time. But Morgan, can you chime in there? I believe that was the main issue there at the Hollister pump station.
That's correct. So Hillary struck August 20th. The Hollister pump station went down on the 28th. That's because it's actually the sediment trash problem coming across the border. So there's not really much we can do about that. It's coming from Mexico. We tried to keep the pump station going, but the sediment clogged it up. We had to shut it down. So the problem is the sediment that comes with the rainwater and the trash.
We didn't just shut it down though. Just follow up.
This is the new lead engineer. You have a local lead engineer now.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just know there's been a change.
But there was damage to the pumps.
That is correct.
And they've had to be replaced.
Correct.
So I think the question is, this is valuable infrastructure. How is that canyon collector pumps system going to be protected when the next event happens? And it will happen.
Well, what we do when it rains, we actually shut both of those canyon collectors down. So we don't take in all that sediment. But eventually we open it up, there's still sediment coming across. So in order to protect both of those canyon collectors, goats and smugglers, we shut those down during rain. But still with the normal flow, there's still sediment, it still builds up. And I believe upstream, there are some sediment basins in Mexico. That's something we need to kind of look at and make sure they're maintaining those and they're sufficient. So the issue is the sediment coming across, whether it's with rain or just the normal trans boundary flows.
I'm a layperson, but I do have some technical background, and it just still is common sense that when we reconstruct these systems with the funds that are available, we would include some sort of safeguards to protect those systems from totally predictable inundation of sediment, trash, water, etc. That seems to me just common sense.
I agree with you.
Yes,
And,
and yes, and for the treatment plant, like I said, we are addressing that also. I believe in our rehab and expansion contract, they're addressing some of the kind of type of sediment and trash that we do receive at the headworks to address those issues in order to protect the plant.
And
So we do
similarly,
need
when there are breakdowns on the other side of the border, again, history shows they're gonna happen. They're unpredictable, but they will happen, and they can completely cause unexpected flows to take place. So that's another contingency I would hope we would build into the new expansion of the plan. The second question is really, I think, a simpler one. If the $310 million supplemental request is enacted, what will then be, in your calculation, the shortfall for both the repairs needed and bringing the plant up to 50 MGD with the 75 MGD short-term capacity? What will be the financial shortfall? This is a question that's important because this is what we have to lobby to get, is that shortfall. So we need to know what your best estimate is of it.
So we would have so what we're doing is we have a plan in place to do a phased approach to use our pretty much we would use our capital funding for FY24, FY25. We usually get capital funding, about 40-50 million. All that would be allocated for the plant. We would still move forward with a contract with a phased approach for the 50 MGD and the peaking factor. Now, of course, because it would be a phased approach, there would be inflation factors in that. And I don't have that information. I don't know. I know we have I think our principal engineer of engineering is on, but we would still move forward with that plant. You would still get we would still get a 50 MGD plant with a peaking factor. Now, timeline and all that would be worked out once we hire the designer and the contractor. Okay.
So I just want to go back just for a moment, and this isn't because, I'm interested in saying, oh, things were bad or anything. I appreciate your candor and the facts you set forth today that we're moving forward, and I applaud the plan, right? The plan is a good plan. Yes, it's dismaying to me and to my constituents that the plan is kind of happening now, right? Because when you were just describing the situation, you mentioned that in June, we had the Arcadis study that said there was $150 million in deferred maintenance. But what happened is that on May 4th, I was at a USMCA EPA meeting at the Dempsey Boulder Center in Imperial Beach. And at that meeting, at the very start of the meeting, the commissioner said, oh yeah, we have $150 million in deferred maintenance. So that was back on May 4th. And then in those same comments said, our proposed budget for maintenance for 2024 is less this coming year than it was in the prior 2 years. So the reason I mention that is because the candor and the information we're getting now, that's the information we must have going forward. Because also at that meeting, it was said that, well, we're not really an advocacy agency. We're kind of told what we get. We get the budget, we get what we get. But what, as Mr. Spriggs was saying, is we are advocates. We have, paid advocates, but we can't advocate if we don't have the information. So going forward, I'm just asking, please, we need this information. I don't know anybody who had any idea, prior to May 4th. I know Mary Geary looked into it after that as well and confirmed, yeah, it's 150 million, but I don't know anybody in January, maybe at IBWC, but nobody in the public or no government officials I know had any idea that basically the entire plan was breaking down. And this is prior, substantially prior to Hillary and that wet event, okay? So we can't say, oh, we had this, unexpected massive tropical storm, which was, quite bizarre to have. But most of the plan, like we were told on May 4th, that the collectors are having problems. It's causing chain reaction problems throughout the rest of the plan. So I just thank you for the information that's coming out now on a regular basis. We need these facts continually. If we only have 3 of these meetings a year, so be it, but we need to know the state of the plan on a regular basis so that we can lobby for those funds, particularly since that, even though I see a change in the IBWC with how they're putting out the information, but if that's not your job to lobby for those funds, we must have that information like as early as possible.
Help us help you.
Yes.
And one
Yes.
last comment before I just finish, then I'll stop talking, is the money, for instance, it's coming from the USMCA, okay, that first 300+ million. The USMCA wasn't like a recent act where we knew that money was coming. The EPA studies that they did for a long time, the environmental studies, so that money could be transferred to the IBWC, like didn't just happen. The lobbying that Coronado and others did to get the legislation done so the EPA could actually transfer that money to IBWC, didn't happen in the last few months. So the preparation, or like what manpower do we need to be able to handle this money and move forward? Going forward, we need that, like the timeline ready so that we can actually get this problem solved and alleviate the pain that the citizens are suffering. So anyways, thank you
Yes.
for letting me set forth that. If you disagree with anything I said, please let me know, because I do want to make sure I understand the facts.
Right, and let me just give you some information. So the estimates were finalized in June. There was some preliminary information, but it was very it's very difficult to us to go out with preliminary information when especially when an estimate's not completed. We also there's procurement guidelines and requirements that we have to follow. So we had to kind of go through those hoops and make sure we weren't putting information out that we couldn't, just to protect the procurement integrity of the expansion and rehabilitation. We didn't want to jeopardize that. So we put out the information that as soon as we could. And I understand it may be frustrating, but like I said, we had to kind of go through those processes. And you're right, the plant was already in a vulnerable state. All that Tropical Hillary did was really kind of exacerbate that. It really did. We had a plan for the out years to do some of that capital work, and some of that was already going to be caught and done on the rehabilitation and expansion. But now, because we got this storm and it just really exacerbated it, we had to act and realign funds quickly and quicker. Tropical Storm Hillary, I don't think that's happened. I heard maybe in 80 years. And of course, that's not the monsoon season. So it was something uncommon. But you're right. The plant was already in a bad shape. Commissioner has been forthright that from, I believe it was 2010 to 2020, there was only about $4 million invested in this plant for capital improvements. We did do some expansion and for secondary. But in terms of looking at the life cycle of some of our current infrastructure, we had not done some of those needs, and we were really underfunded. So that's why she's moving forward with these agency-wide manpower studies, capital plans, and all that in order to really assess the needs of the agency-wide. But I will take your points home to Commissioner and let her know that you all, appreciate this, but would like the information as quickly as you can get it. And that's what we're trying to do in coordination with EPA. And I know Lily, you're on, and I didn't know if you wanted to say something. Lily Lee from EPA, our partner, is online.
Thank you so much. Hi, I'm from the EPA Region 9 office, and I'm the manager of the water infrastructure section. And I'm so glad to talk with you today. I put into the chat a slide that we had presented at a recent public meeting that showed some of the history that you were just talking about, and I'm going to see if I can share it. I don't know if I will be able to, but you're right that in the beginning that we did have the $300 million that is thanks to the great advocacy of all of you in this room. And so that was before we had done a feasibility study. And then after that, we had a series of community meetings and meetings with our stakeholders in which we weighed different options. And so the cost estimate was based on a class 5, which is a more preliminary level estimate that was for the purpose of comparing different options for what water infrastructure needs there could be. And at that time, you know, we had asked the public, do you want to only go forth with a plan that is using the $300 million that we had in hand? But the public said, no, we want to continue planning with whatever amount of work is needed to really significantly solve the problem. And so it was as a result of that positive signal that we got from our consultants that we went ahead and worked on getting this contract in place that Isela talked about to do the more thorough assessment. At that time, we didn't have, neither IBWC nor EPA had this information in hand, and that's why together EPA and IBWC paid for this assessment work with the results coming out in June, as Isela had said. So, you know, none of us knew at the level of the class 5, which is a more preliminary level of assessment, exactly what the cost would be. And then later we got a class 4, which is a more advanced and more detailed version of cost estimate. And that gave us the unfortunate news that it would cost more. And that is, as Isela had said, because of various factors such as inflation and supply limits and just the passage of time. And you had asked about what, let me put this down. You'd asked about what remaining costs would not be covered if this new $310 million were enacted. And Isela already shared before that the digesters would not be funded. And so that would be, you know, roughly another $300 million. In addition, she had shared that the rehabilitation costs could be 100 to 150 million or so. So part of that 610 million includes the most essential part of the rehab, which is about 100 million, that would be absolutely necessary before an expansion could be possible. So there would still also be unmet rehabilitation needs of those that are also helpful, but not necessary for the expansion. So I know that the community members, you've been expressing, and very rightly so, great frustration that we're not able to solve the problem faster. And what it will take, is Isela has said, is this additional funding, which has not been yet enacted by Congress. And we're glad that the president asked for it, and we are hopeful that that will enable great progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Lily.
Richard, I see you have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to get some clarification on the NAD Bank funding. You know, you indicated that with this additional requested emergency funding, it would not include support for the anaerobic digesters. So obviously NAD Bank is a development bank. They don't do grants, and they'll do some small grants through the back. My question is, what's the financing strategy that's being explored with the NAD Bank, and who ultimately would pay?
So that's all that they're actually looking into, because there is no funding available for the anaerobic digesters. They're actually looking at if there's, you know, bills that can be used, or if there's if it could be, I guess, if the sludge, they're looking at different options to, you know, sludge is a viable product and maybe something that can be used. So they're looking at all sorts of options, because right now we don't know what the funding mechanism will be, but they're looking at maybe looking at opportunities for credits, looking at selling some of the sludge. I mean, things like that. But right now it's not set in stone. It's just preliminary work that we're looking at right now. And there's nothing set yet.
Okay, I wanted to, get some clarification or, just kind of characterize what happened during, Hillary and I've talked to Morgan Rogers many times and, when the water comes into the plant during a rainstorm, because Mexico does not separate sewage from storm, you just get phenomenal amount of flows. That's correct, right?
That's correct.
So, I thought that the flows coming in, because, were regulated at one time. But now because of, basically breakdowns, you can't regulate what comes into your plant. Is that correct now?
That is correct. So whatever, since JB1 is inoperable, that was our control. There's two valves in there, both inoperable. So,
Junction box plant.
right.
Okay.
So whatever comes through junction box 1 goes through the plant. So under normal circumstances, we regulate the flow now by telling PBC to shut down or reduce their pumping. It's all about managing pumps. That's how we do it now. During a rainstorm, like you said, the rain combines with the sewer system. We get whatever comes into the plant, we can't turn it away.
Yeah, and so looking back on the Arcadis report that was done in 2019, they went back almost 10 years, 2013. That's through the halfway life of 20 years of the plant has been operational. And even back then, you guys were getting flows that were just way up above the plant's capacity on a regular basis. And I go back through trying to go back and just remember all the. So I remember walking through there with Steve Mullen, who is prior to Carlos Pena, who was prior to Nicholas Chapa, and then you came on, and I'm glad you're here. But even every one of those operators that you as the operator, chief engineer, they all said the plant is getting just beaten up because the flows are just way beyond what the plant was designed to take. And so these repairs were actually known for a long time. And I remember Nicholas Chapa, when I was with Mitch McKay, who's now a city council member, that he just said the plant's just getting beat up. So looking into the future, when these repairs are made, will we be able to control the flow to the plant so this type of maintenance or this type of damage to our plant can be alleviated?
I would say yes, and we have a contract already awarded to replace JB1. And that, with that back in operation, we should control the flows. I don't know what happened, way back when you say that we had consistently high flows. JB1, I think, was operational, so I don't know what that situation was, but once JB1 is operational, we can control the flows into the plant. We shouldn't have excess flows unless we are willing to take those.
Yeah, and so I kind of remember too that we talked about the canyon collectors, and they are shut down prior to rains. And so prior to Hillary, those pumps were basically shut down, the canyon collectors, all the water goes into the river and bypasses those. So, but when the pipes broke on the mountainside above Smugglers, I remember your report said the amount of solids were just tremendous. And so it wasn't a rain event. It just happened and you had the pipes open. And those pumps were 20 years old at that time that you're replacing. So did the amount of solids that came into the system, do you think they had an adverse effect on those pumps where they were just essentially wore out? They're already old. And so
I would say over time, all the sediment, the excess flows we've had over the past year, all that adds to the wear and tear on our pumps. So I would assume that the sediment that we got when that that pipeline ruptured and came into our system, I'm sure that probably added to the wear and tear and condition of those pumps.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Question for Estella. Without anaerobic digestion, can the plant still meet full secondary requirements? And first, second of all, there's like 3 levels of funding, 300, 610 million, and then some number above that. What do we get for each of those levels in a kind of concise way, not detailed?
The 310, the 300 was the original estimate. And that was the funding available under the USMCA. So that's why that number was provided. The 610 million will get us the plus or minus 30% contingency factor will get us the 50 MGD. So we're increasing by 25 MGD with a peaking factor of 75 MGD. The 910 million would be to add the anaerobic digestion. So the decision was made to go with the 610 million option to increase the plant to 50 MGD with a 75 MGD peaking factor and not do the anaerobic digesters under this contract.
Without the anaerobic digesters, do we need to go in full permit compliance though?
Yes, what the anaerobic digesters were intended for was to reduce the amount of sludge. So what's going to happen, we're doubling the plant, we're going to get the double amount of sludge. So that would have to be, dealt with. So that's why we're looking at other options and other strategies for this. We just, needed to move on this rehab and not slow it down. We didn't think it was viable for us to get funding close to $1 billion. So the decision was made to go with a 610 million option, and that will reduce transboundary flows by 90%. So,
thank you.
Hello. It was very interesting to hear all about the plant, but I came here because I'm a swimmer in Coronado. And I want to know if there's any plan to stop discharging the effluent into the ocean, which has closed the IB beaches, and it's beginning to close more and more weeks of swimming in Coronado. Also, coming up on 2024, why aren't we keeping the effluent on the land and finding a way to have it reclaimed as the water that is needed here and in Baja?
let me address the first question. So, as I noted, the study, the environmental reviews and all the studies done by EPA and US and the IBWC were to do a comprehensive solution. Part of that solution is work in Mexico, and that's work identified under our Minute 328. That includes work on the San Antonio de los Buenos plant, which directly right now is inoperable in Mexico, and that directly discharged untreated sewage into the ocean. And of course, seasonally, you get the tides that go into IB, and that causes some of the closures. Also, the transboundary flows that we're getting are causing, some of that. So we're looking at this at all levels. And unfortunately, I know it's been years and years that you all are looking for this solution, but now with this Minute 328 and the projects that we're doing, and there's going to be progress. And I know it's not fast enough, but we are working towards a solution to get these beaches open and lessen the economic impact and the impact to our residents there. And I'm sorry, I don't know I can't remember your second question or your second point.
Number one, just don't put the effluent in the ocean. The tests that have been run by San Diego County in the last couple of years show a direct effect of that effluent going in the ocean from the border because it's San Diego County is testing up to Coronado. So it's been chronicled. And the cure is don't put sewage waters in the ocean. And the second most obvious thing, the 21st century solution is, even if you don't do it, keep it so it can be piped to a water reclamation facility where all of it can be reclaimed. Even the solids can be injected into the soil to benefit San Diego County and Baja.
Right, and I'm not sure that those options have been looked at, but I know we're limited because of the kind of, unfortunately, because we get the sewage from Mexico, there's not pre-treatment programs that the US, you know, we can't put our regulations on Mexico, and we can't control those pre-treatment programs. I don't have an answer for you on that right now, but I do know that that is an issue at looking at other options. Now, Mexico is, of course, a sovereign country, and we can't control them putting sewage directly into the ocean, but we can influence it, and that's the point of our Minute 328 and the work that we're doing, and the fact that this has been elevated at higher levels, where you have Department of State officials and all that constantly engaged in this situation in order to make sure that these projects progress.
My name is Alex Yakutis. I just turned out from the Citizens Advisory Board, and welcome to all the new members. I think there's a little history, and everybody's new because it was 2020 when I was started the board. So I think including new engineer, new team in El Paso, but a little history I think is really important. One thing for the EPA, it was pretty frustrating listening to that, because in July of 2020, Doug Linden from the EPA said, this is a fast track for 300 million it hit. We're going to fast track this thing, and here we are. So that's a little history. I think the other thing that's very important is, I think it's good to see Imperial Beach are the geniuses of this problem. I mean, you've been living with it. Coronado showing up. I was from Coronado on the board for 3 years, but Coronado never showed. And John, thank you for being here, because there was never a mayor, a council person, a citizen from Coronado that went to these meetings down at IB. So it's really good that we have a councilman here, and thank you for that. Our mayor never showed up. I wrote many, many emails to him. He sends lots out, but he doesn't respond. So this was a pretty frustrating meeting for me, because the history for you guys. One thing that's really important, this team, the State Department, IBWC, EPA, and they're part of, IBWC is funded by the State Department. They're so trickle down, so low, they get no money. It's hard, you could complain all night. They need billions to solve this problem. The second thing is the EPA too. The EPA, you know, we have to have a study to figure out how to remove effluent from going in. I know the study was how to spend the 300 million properly, but what did it cost to figure out how to spend it? I don't know what they spent to do that. No one's fault. It's our system, and our system is so frustrating to me. Everything you've said about the condition of the plant, you know, 1/4 inch of rain, you'd need 60 of the new plants. If you wanted to take all the water and treat it, it's impossible. You will always shut down that plant forever and ever with full capacity, with 900 million operating right now when you have a rainstorm. You guys all realize that. There will be effluent flowing into the ocean, and all IB knows that. And I won't take too much more time, but I do think some really smart people, I don't think it's anybody's fault but the federal government. We need equal protection under the law as citizens. And I think it's going to take a bomb like the city of Coronado, the city of IB, the county of San Diego to sue the federal government. And they might end up the feds like under the Environmental Protection Agency, the Clean Water Act that we're supposed to get. I'm a big swimmer too. It's ridiculous. We're not even protected under our own laws, and it's so bad now. So we can give them everything and do everything to help these guys. 4 years from now, we'll be sitting here right now unless we have everybody has to get out. They need help. I don't know how we do it, but I sat through 3 years of these. And it's not a bad thing. Thank God you're here. And we're so far down in the bark of the forest. You're in the micro organisms of the forest. 50,000 feet is the problem. And thanks for listening. I don't know what else, you know. One more question. Somebody had their hand.
Hi, Laura Wilkinson with StopTheSewage.org. We're the organization in Coronado that is harassing Representative Kay Granger, who runs appropriations to make sure that 310 million gets in the budget before we close the government down. I have a couple of things here. Hurricane Sandy caused sewage plant failures, wastewater treatment plant failures all up and down the Hudson, yet FEMA jumped up and got them repaired within weeks. Why did we not access that for Storm Hilary? And what do we have in place to address that with the atmospheric rivers, the El Nino, and the climate change storms that are coming here? Second, the PPA 1 repair is going to happen in Mexico, but won't that repair just take the sewage to Punta Banderas to SAB, and that will follow the northern currents straight up to Coronado and Imperial Beach again? What are we doing about that, if anything, outside of pressure? Because SAB probably won't be completed till 2028, knowing how Mexico normally tracks their construction projects, or has historically. Third, why are we not aggressively asking for the most capacity that we can get? I mean, the 50 MGDs, not only that, but we have binational growth here. We have maquiladores onshoring from Asia every single day right across the border. Tijuana is growing at an explosive rate. And we need as much capacity as we could possibly get. We need anaerobic digesters. And we also need reverse osmosis for the water. We know that the aquifers are getting depleted both in Tijuana, all through Baja, and here. And of course, the Colorado River Pact is expiring in 2026. We're all going to have our water cut by about 25%. So why are we not planning for that? And if we are not planning for that, how can we help you plan for that? Whether it's public-private mechanism, or whether it's a mechanism like Sandag has for Otay Mesa 2, where there's a border crossing toll that pays for infrastructure, that's exactly what Sandag does right now. They're building a cross-border toll, which will fund the roads and bridges in Mexico as well as in the United States. And if we're going to grow as a binational area, we have to do binational infrastructure on a binational basis. You're shaking your head. You know, a lot of things seem impossible until you start to do them. So if you have a better idea, I want to hear it.
And I think those are good ideas, and you know, we appreciate you voicing them. I do know that as part of the anaerobic digesters, the strategies that are being looked at is public-private partnership. That is one thing that is being looked at. I don't know, Ray. I know we looked at what we could possibly do and possibly get and how we can phase it. And the decision, I said, was made to go with a 50 MGD at this time. Ray, I don't know if you have additional information on that. If you're still on.
Yes, thank you, Sally. Yeah, this is Ray Macias, Principal Engineer for Engineering Department. No, really nothing more to add. That was the reference of looking forward and trying to estimate what the size was that was needed to be able to handle the flows that are transboundary flows that are currently happening now. But that decision and that analysis was made, and that was the determination moving forward. And that was in consultation with stakeholders and EPA, ourselves in making that determination.
You know, and if there's other ideas that you would like us to consider, like the public-private, there's information that you want to share, we welcome that information. We are still, like I said, for the anaerobic digesters, we're still looking at options through NatBank. It's not going to stop. We're going to continue looking at other alternatives. There's other work under the USMCA that we still need to look for in the future. So we'll continue to do so. Right now, our focus has been on getting this rehab and expansion done. The bigger picture also for USIBWC is getting this plant into compliance. That is the priority. And, you know, unfortunately, we have the funding we have right now, and that's what we're prioritizing. But like if there's strategies that you think would be beneficial that we could actually consider as the federal government, I know we would welcome those ideas.
Wait, because I have questions in the chat also.
Thank you, Lily. And on the chat, and it could be shared.
I had a question, and a point. I wanted to support, more than with hand clapping that was done, the point that was made, that you made earlier. What's your name again?
Laura.
Of course, Laura Wilkinson. And that is, now, I served for about 10 years on the Metro Wastewater Commission for the San Diego region. And that was the period during which we went from a trial 1 MGD program for water recycling, potable recycling, which tested out to be feasible, to now the pure water program, which is about to be completed, which is going to be about, I guess, 81, 89 MGD, something like that. That is going to be potable reuse. That's a much higher standard. That's for, you know, drinking water. And that's going to supply about somewhere between 1/3 and 1/4 of San Diego's potable water demand. We discovered in the process that wastewater has a value that can be very high if something's going to be done with it other than dump it into the ocean, treating it up to secondary standards and dumping it into the ocean. So the idea of reclamation, at least to purple pipe level, that can be used for agriculture, which is already happening at the San Diego water treatment plant right next door to the International Water Treatment Plant. It's already happening, and that water is being sold to the Otay Water Authority. We really have to think big here in a binational way, as was suggested. If we think traditionally, and I know this is, I'm speaking to people who are operational, but I'm also through you speaking to our commissioner and speaking to the EPA. I hope she's still on. That this is an opportunity, you know, and we always are faced with opportunities whenever we have major challenges, major breakdowns, major disasters, such as this cross-border pollution situation. It's gotten everybody's attention now. So this is really an opportunity to take a look at the bigger picture, the bigger regional, including Mexico, picture with regard to shrinking water resources for agriculture and for human consumption. And instead of investing $1 billion ultimately in our ability to pump it out to the ocean in a clean manner, we ought to be thinking about maybe $1.5 billion to convert that commodity into something that can be sold on both sides of the border and used for agriculture, or if it's upgraded even further, such as the pure water recycling in San Diego, even for drinking water. This is the time now to think about this bigger picture solution. And I know that's not you guys' job description at this level, but it is the commissioner's job description to think about these kinds of solutions, because this is a cross-border need in terms of agricultural water and human consumption water. So I urge you to pass this up the line It's not just coming from me, but it's coming from the community. There's, you know, in the next 20, 30 years, this kind of an investment will be paying off, and everybody will think that this generation, all of us around and on the screen we're geniuses for coming up with it. And they will think if we don't, and we're just continuing to put it out to sea, that we were idiots at this time period when nobody's got water for agriculture and human consumption in a rapidly growing part of the world, this whole Southern California, Mexico area. So please, I beseech you, have somebody take a look at this, and let's get this idea some traction, even though it's out of the box and out of the ballpark in terms of what you're dealing with right now with the existing plans that you have presented. Thank you.
And I just want to comment that there has been discussion in our binational meetings with Mexico regarding the San Diego, Tijuana area on reuse. I do know, you know, there's issues on the US side because of pretreatment in Mexico, but there has been some discussions of doing that within the Tijuana area. But I will pass this information on. But I just wanted you to know that there has been some discussion on this.
I do want to take time to address the questions in our chat for our virtual participants. We do have a hard stop with the facility, so we do need to move on. Give me a chance just to give the same courtesy to our virtual participants. For Isela or Morgan, the question was, we're doubling the international treatment plant capacity. What are you doing to repair the outfall? The outfall is working at 50% capacity and expels effluent into shallow water. Does the outfall currently have the capacity to handle the doubling flow from the plant?
I believe it does, but I would need to confirm with our engineering team.
Well, we're talking about the South Bay Ocean outfall. It
Yes.
does have capacity. Yeah, the pipeline itself has a capacity about 170 some million gallons per day, peaking over 300. However, the diversion at the very end, there's a number of ports. Right now, the ports only support 50 million gallons per day, but there's plenty of room to add additional ports to well cover the additional capacity that we plan to send out.
Morgan.
The next question was, why aren't we using the Arcadis 2016 plan that keeps the sewage outflow within Mexico?
I am not certain about that. But I do know because the flow goes down, I know there has been preference to do treatment within the US. But I really can't speak about the 2016 report. I'm not fully aware of it. I apologize.
The next question we had was, why have we not put in place a net system to catch the trash and sediment like they've implemented in so many third world countries?
So there are other options that are being explored. There are other alternatives that we do want to explore. There is a Tijuana River Diversion project that we want to explore, and I know Commissioner Ginette wants to allocate funding in FY24 for at least the study. There's also other solutions that are being looked at through the Minute 320 process. So we are exploring at all levels right now, but our main focus right now is to get this rehab and expansion off the ground.
If I may add, there is a project to install a trash boom across the Tijuana River. And I believe it's funded by grants from the Water Board and EPA or. But there is a project. We're going through the permitting process right now. And I think they plan to have that probably sometime next year.
That's right. Thank you, Morgan.
The last question we have virtually, it said, but the IBWC also needs another $50 million for non-essential rehab of the current IPT equipment. So total need is identified as 960 million. Is that correct?
So we know we need additional needs at the plant. What we are going to do under the rehab and expansion are those immediate and urgent needs for the expansion and what we need for the plant. We are doing, I had in my conclusion slide, we are doing an assessment study. As part of that assessment, our treatment plants are one of the first, an additional assessment of cost and total for everything. and this is agency-wide, so we can, and a capital plan, so we can prioritize. We have a lot of needs throughout the agency, but we want to be able to prioritize and provide that in order to justify our funding request. So the plan is to do some of this additional work in the out years and with the regular construction funding that we do get. And the hope is that having these asset management plans and capital plans will fully detail the resources that the agency needs in order to continue, in order to continue to have our infrastructure operational and address all our funding needs to do the capital work that we need to do.
Thank you, Isela. As I mentioned, we do have a hard stop with the facility, so I'm going to move on to the public comment period because we did have 4 citizens that signed up for public comment. I encourage you, if you had additional questions, please send them to the Public Affairs Office, and we will make sure that they get answered for you and get the response back to you. The first person that we had signed up for public comment was Mr. Eric Severson, which I believe is joining us virtually.
Yes, thank you very much. In terms of reuse with the plant, Lily posted in minute 328 for the virtual people. The water to be retreated by an expanded plant is to be returned to Mexico at some point when Mexico is ready for it. That's in the agreement. It was signed by commissioners. Currently, right now, the main beaches of Coronado are open, yet 10 million gallons of sewage is spewing through the Tijuana River Valley next to homes of my friends, Baron Partlow in the back row, Leon Benham, Citizens Forum Board. And I just can't believe we're having this discussion. The expectations going forward with JB1 and no intake will be that the plant most likely will be overrun next week with a pretty substantial rain forecast, similar to Tropical Storm Hillary. Morgan notified everyone of that story in January of 2022. That story was broken by Baron Partlow in the back row. Thank you, Baron, for your hard work on that. It's due to the international collector, which is not fixed yet. The most important thing in this is pipeline PB1A in Mexico to relieve the constant and never-ending dumping of sewage upon the residents of San Ysidro, South San Diego, Imperial Beach, Nestor, and Otay Mesa. Dump it in the ocean as far south as you can. Keep it in Mexico, block it in Mexico. I don't care. I really don't care at this point. This is insane that we are even having discussions about whether it should be treated, whether it should be put here. Block it at the border. The correlation between blocking sewage at the border and open beaches is so strong. Any of you in that room, I would be happy to meet and go over it with you. Any of you, happy. Scientists, citizens, any of you. I'll make a PowerPoint if you like. There is no correlation between water quality testing and the Falk-Feddersen claim that Punta Banderas is the main source. And in fact, in the California Coastal Mission presentation given by Commissioner Heener, the main source of pollution affecting all of us except me, because I live in the far North County of San Diego now, is the Tijuana River and the constant and never-ending dumping by Mexico of sewage because they will not replace pipelines, they will not replace pumps, and when something goes down, their choice is to dump it on us. Block the sewage, block it faster. In JB1 timeline of 2025, Morgan, you're gonna have. You know how I feel, Morgan. Thank you very much.
Can I make a comment?
Okay.
We actually are looking at a temporary solution to have a mechanism to have JB1 operational. We are still moving forward with a permanent solution, but we're looking at a temporary solution, and we're hoping to have that in place by. I know it's not fast enough, but at least by early December. So.
Our next public comment is Mr. Partlow.
Aaron Barlow, Stop the Food, former United States International Boundary Water Commission Citizens Forum Board member, Tijuana River Valley Outreach. We all want the sewage off the beach. We're all in total agreement that toxic chemical contamination coming from Mexico is not a good thing in our air, soil, water. We all want that to stop. We're all in perfect agreement with that. Morgan, I know how hard you work. I know what the International Boundary and Water Commission has done. I know what they're up against. I know that they have done everything during my tenure and my activism to meet their contractual obligation and obviously exceed that, whether permitted or not. You've done your job. The most sinister and diabolical plan ever perpetrated on the people of the South Bay was to propose a sewage pond in the Tijuana River Flood Control Channel on the plain at the doorstep of Coral Gate. Let's take all this poison, 30 bombs dropped on us daily. Let's take all this poison and put it at the doorstep inland of a challenged community, an underprivileged, quote unquote, community of color. That is the most diabolical and sinister plan ever perpetrated on the people of the South Bay. The EPA representative knows. I have emailed her. She knows where I stand on this. She knows where the people stand. I'm going to reiterate it one more time so that it doesn't get snuck back in like a gas tax in California into the plan. The residents, I've heard the Coastal Commission, Surfrider, everybody that keeps the public out of their backdoor backroom meetings, that they are select stakeholders. Their thing is now is that they're unique stakeholders. I got a term that we are to be referred to as residents. We are the ultimate stakeholders. And this is our plan. We are seeking to retain the services of an environmental attorney to make some lawsuits of our own. And Morgan, that doesn't necessarily mean you. Okay? Leave Coral Gate alone because you're gonna have the fight of your life if you put a sewage pond on their rivers. I'm telling you, I've had them on camera 3 times telling you guys back off. They weren't advised, they weren't briefed, they weren't even asked what they thought about it. And they went on camera with me 3 times to say that. Yep, keep it up. That's going to be the major one. Now, we are the ultimate stakeholders. We're the residents. We pay all the elected officials and entities' salaries with our tax money. This is going to stop. This lady had a question. The Hudson River is a point source pollution. Mexico is a non-point source pollution. And let me tell you, they use it to their advantage every chance they get. We cannot enforce an international non-point source pollution like we do a point source pollution in the United States, such as the Hudson River. That's the answer to your question. The ultimate solution, President Trump proved it. And I'm saying this from a blue state that's pro-sanctuary, from a blue county that's pro-sanctuary, that has a city that is blue and pro-sanctuary. President Trump proved when you close that border over immigration, it stopped. And I'm here to tell you, you close that border over sewage, they close our beach, they pollute Coronado. We close that border. When they do that, you watch this go away. They drop dirty bombs on us. The Mexican government knows what's in that water. They let it come. That is environmental and biological terrorism in the form of dirty bombs containing raw sewage, toxic chemical contamination, trash, medical waste, anything they can throw at us, they do, and they still do. It's got to stop. Close that border if you really want this to go away. Everybody should be pushing for that. President Trump proved it with immigration. The Mexican government enlisted 27,000 National Guard to assist President Trump to stop illegal immigration in this country. I guarantee you, you close that border over sewage, this goes away. That's just one solution. I don't want that border closed. I don't want to sue anybody. But the people that I represent and have pushed me for their advocation to be here tonight, we're well prepared to go the distance. And there is no environmental justice for the people. I'm not talking Surfrider, whose plan it was to put a standing sewage pond out there in the plain initially. I'm not talking Wild Coast, I'm not talking the city of San Diego as a government or any other entity, government. You have failed to protect us. You failed. I don't care if you solve it right now as I am speaking. The damage has been done. We are seeking the services of an environmental attorney to represent us, the ultimate stakeholders, the resident stakeholders of San Diego County, mainly the South Bay. Thank you.
Mr. Blake Anderson, is he in the public?
Hi, my name's Blake Anderson. I'm here today to express some of my frustrations about how the general public's discussions have been going that involve the wastewater issues from Mexico. I'm also expressing frustration about other issues connected to our border in Mexico. I'm a homeowner and registered voter in the Hillcrest neighborhood of San Diego City. I'm also a normal gay person and not an LGBT gay. The number one solution to the problem that involves Mexico's wastewater contaminating beaches and other areas of San Diego County is never being discussed for some unknown reason. The unspoken solution would also solve the other numerous issues that involve the border. Issues such as drugs being regularly smuggled across the border, US jobs being lost to Mexico, etc. I feel we should perform an involuntary annexation on Mexico and then continue throughout all of South America. If we were to annex Mexico, its residents would also greatly benefit and their quality of life would substantially improve. The people would not need to live in fear of the constant disruption caused by the drug groups and the corrupt Mexico government. The residents of Mexico and South America deserve the protection of the US government and the US Constitution. Every person on the planet does. This is an ethical solution. The territories would then have to comply with US laws and regulations. Our countries being united would also strengthen all of our people against foreign adversaries such as China. I'm tired of hearing people complain about Mexico and other foreign territories. No one should be complaining about any issues involving our border, immigration, drug smuggling, etc. if they do not fully support an annexation of Mexico. This solution needs to be discussed, and I'm frustrated with US Representative Scott Peters' office, California's 50th district. He's my congressperson. I've not heard a word about this solution from his office, and he's instead pushing for more taxpayer dollars being wasted on another foreign territory and their issues. I'm only hearing about us throwing more dollars away on treating a foreign territory as a wastewater. This is absolutely unacceptable. All of our beaches should be shut down if necessary. This will just further pressure the general public into supporting annexation. This should have been done many years ago. We made a huge mistake during the 1846 Mexican-American War. We won the war, and instead of annexing their entire country, we gave it back to them. We should quit complaining and shut down every wastewater treatment facility we maintain for Mexico and cut off every penny to those projects. We must proceed with the process for either a voluntary or involuntary annexation. Hopefully the Mexico government will use logic and just surrender their entire country to the US. If they don't, we'll most certainly win a war, and it can be an expedient process if sufficient force is effectively used. And obviously we need to pull out of the awful United Nations and cut off every penny. It only hinders our country and benefits foreign territories. We must pull out of every agreement that is legally not allowing us to annex foreign territories. I'm hopeful people process my comments and think at a higher level. Please stop bickering over Mexico wastewater and start focusing on bigger and better solutions for our country and county.
One more public comment. Mr. Alex Yakutis. You had your say? Okay. Mr. Benham?
You know, Alex, I started this job and I think I'm gonna come ask you for some advice. But the follow. Give you advice. Well, I know about that, but you know, back in 2019, there was a solution put forward. And I was blessed by meeting a PhD named Gary Vargas, who was working with me in the Tijuana River Valley. And, you know, the project that he mentioned, he's passed away, but has really come to fruition in Orange County. That project, they spent $900 million to process 135 million or 130 million gallons of water a day. And they take it up into the mountains and they inject it. When it comes back to Huntington Beach, they just sell it because the groundwater and the alluvial soils that they have, which are just like ours, the water is pure. It still goes through chlorination and regular processing, but then they sell it back to the public for $1,640 per acre foot. If you do the math on our problem, it's the same volume of water. So they make $180 million out of their $900 million investment. They make 18%. We are blessed. We're better off. The Mexico and US drainage basin is 1,800 square miles. But I'm sorry, but I don't think the IBWC can act that way. It just doesn't have the ability to act like a water district. So what would you say if Coronado, South Bay started a water district? It would cost us $10 a month. But we would be able to lease the land from the IBWC, use the county land that we have, and we could reprocess the water. We would be able to take it up into the mountains if Mexico wants to cooperate and re-inject it in the water, into the groundwater, and it would come right back to our valley where we have a water district. Basically, the $2 billion, including your 900 million, and the $1.1 billion we would need, would be paid off in 20 years. And after that point, it would be, our water bills would then be able to go down. We wouldn't charge you $10 a month. But if we were to take ownership of this problem away from the federal government and ask them, oh, by the way, the only thing the Democrats and the Republicans agreed to was a $1.4 trillion infrastructure package. Do you know that California is sitting on 48 billion that it doesn't have to pay back? They're grants. So our water district would take that loan. We would get smart people like Morgan Rogers and the IBWC to cooperate, and we cooperate with Mexico. What is wrong with this picture? Number one, we would close down the SBOO. No more sewage off our beach. No more. The river would be just like the San Diego River, which is supplied by Santee Lakes. All the river that goes from Santee Lakes to Dog Beach and brings the alluvial soils, clean sand. We would do that by reintroducing clean water back into the river out of the new plant we built for Morgan. So the only thing that we're lacking is the vision. And I've worked in government and I know that there's hierarchies and they just can't move like that. I mean, God bless you and your study about the air, but you have parameters that you have to live by, and I get that. But a water district that is controlled by us, we'd be masters of our own fate. And all we have to have is the vision to do that. So I'd answer questions, but she's not going to give me the time.
The last item that we have on the agenda, and as I mentioned, we're a little pressed for time. Board discussion, which includes a formal vote for co-chair. At this time, I would ask if there is anybody interested in the co-chair position, and we can do.
Can I nominate someone?
You can.
Can I nominate Brian McNeese?
You can. Yes.
Because he does a great job. Great
Yeah.
job.
I second.
I think
The second,
he's been awesome.
does the board concur?
Yes.
Yes.
Brian McNeese is your co-chair. So at this time, the last item on the agenda is board discussion, including any interest in future topics for future presentations at other meetings. Yes, sir.
I talked to the Orange County Water District. They would, that I have to have 10 people at least to go and review their construction documents and their plan and to vet out, what are the possibilities? And if anyone in the public or that from this board would like to go up to Orange County, look at their plan, look at their real numbers, look at, the problems that they had, and the solutions. I think that would be a great, and then we can make a presentation and bring it back to the board.
Any other suggestions?
I can talk about. We have had some smaller meetings of the Citizens Forum. Now that we have a co-chair, in the past, the two co-chairs would get together and in consultation as needed with the Citizens Forum group come up with an agenda items. So I would ask that Brian, take the time to get the agenda ideas from the Citizens Forum board and put them forward in a more deliberate way than we have time for this evening.
Actually, Brandon had formulated some agenda items earlier on, so we can work from that list.
Fantastic.
I just wanted to take 2 seconds to thank my city manager and my assistant city manager for working on venues for these meetings because they take a lot of time out of their personal life to do it. I know my city manager was online and my assistant city manager was here for multiple hours. So thank you to them.
I am offering a presentation on the Tijuana wastewater system. I've been doing research on that for over 25 years. So I would like to show the whole picture, not only the San Antonio Los Buenos, the Venezuela, but the whole picture of all the different wastewater and all the different sources of pollution that got into the Tijuana River.
Okay.
Yes.
That's great.
Very good.
Absolutely.
And that includes some unpublicized sources, I think, before, like the dairies and that's.
Yes, no, they are all my research is based on official sources, but they are very hard to find. So everything that I have, my research is based on official Mexican sources like Econagua, like INEGI. And then I combine those with geographic information systems, but it's all official. And unfortunately, since it's all official, it's based on reports. We don't have the exact number. Like, for example, we have a plant that has 2 gallons, 3 gallons, whatever number per bit. But we don't know exactly that is what they are using, is that they're treating, and is that they are discharging. But the permits, they are based on discharge. So I've been collecting those databases for the past 20, 25 years. I combined it, that's what I have.
I have you noted on the suggested items. Yes, sir.
Just a minute. My name is Mike, and for over 50 years, I'll confess to 50 years, I've recycled all my water. But the number one thing you gotta do is to separate the gray water from the poop. Because it starts smelling, the bacteria works on the water. And got hundreds of apartments around me, nobody knows what I'm doing, I do other stuff. And I got in trouble, with the city. San Diego City still charges me sewer fees to them. But nobody's did, so that's all. And you guys that have all that trash down there, you have trash, sewage, water, rainwater. Oh, I feel for you. Good luck.
Any additional suggestions from the board? Suggestions from the public? Great. I thank you all for coming out. And thank you to the Coronado Library for allowing us to have our meeting here. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie.
Yeah, because we're just starting. Right. Just tell them when they're speeches. Start chief environmental.